Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Picharane Nivasesa Sanyavadi Paskatya Devatarane Om Agyanataminandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chaksu Sumilitanjena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Caitanya Manabhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vansakalpa Trubhasya Kripasadnubhayevaccha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. We've been hearing of the glorious activities of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu after he took sannyas, which itself was so dramatic. Mahaprabhu had not yet accepted alms, any food or anything like that after he took sannyas, and he had been wandering in a very internal state in the part of Bengal which is known as Radhadesh, where the Ganga does not flow. And there Nityananda Prabhu, he actually desired to go to Vrindavan at that time, but Nityananda Prabhu, knowing the internal needs of Mahaprabhu and the internal needs of the world and Mahaprabhu's mission, and knowing how distressed the devotees from Mayapur, Sridhar Mayapur, Navadvip were, he brought Sri Advaita Acharya back to the home. He brought Mahaprabhu back to the home of Advaita Acharya, where they took prasadam, and there was some arguments between Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu, as it's mentioned in that place and other places. They would criticize each other and play in that way. And then the devotees started arriving, and during the day they would discuss Krishna Katha, and in the evening they would have great kirtans, and in those kirtans the ecstasy of the spiritual world would manifest. The ecstasy of the spiritual world would manifest. And that ecstasy of the spiritual world, or the soul's presence in the spiritual world, the soul experiencing the spiritual world, is the great longing that every soul has, and not extremely eager to bring our consciousness to the spiritual world, which means service to Krishna with great loving devotion. Not eager for that. We seek substitutes in the material world to try to bring the soul, bring ourselves to the satisfaction that we long for, but of course that's to no avail. So human life is meant for, as we all know, it's meant for the soul's journey, the soul completing his journey to the spiritual realm, and therefore going home again to his actual position. So Mahaprabhu, at some point after 10 days, he requested the devotees who had come, hundreds of them, to return home to their place. And of course you all remember what instructions he gave them. He requested them to Krishna Nam, Krishna Katha, and Krishna Aradhana, just worship Krishna, speak about Krishna, and chant Krishna's names. And these are called Sarupa Siddha Bhakti. They are the elements of bhakti that Krishna himself is inherently present within. When we chant, Krishna is inherently there in his name, Abhinatam Namanamana. When we discuss Krishna, Puranarko Danodita, when we discuss Krishna Katha from the Bhagavatam, then Krishna is actually present. And when we discuss and when we worship Krishna in the deity form with great devotion, then Krishna is also there. So Mahaprabhu basically said, you take this gift of the holy names and you stay always with Krishna in this way. And in this way you will be with Krishna. And then Advaitacharya asked Mahaprabhu if he could stay another few days, 2 or 4 days, and Mahaprabhu agreed. And then after that time, the inevitable was going to happen, that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu decided to leave. So that's where we will begin. So Advaitacharya, Mahaprabhu said, don't worry, I will see you again. It's not the last time you'll see me, because sometimes you'll come to Jagannath Puri and we will engage in pastimes there. And for the next 20 years or so, Mahaprabhu, the devotees came to Jagannath Puri, except when Mahaprabhu was traveling. But they came to Jagannath Puri for 4 months generally, and they observed Rath Yatra, they observed Janmashtami, they observed festivals, and every day, every single day, they had kirtan together in the Jagannath temple, and they divided into groups, and sometimes Mahaprabhu would manifest himself in each and every group at the same time, and they would all think, oh, Mahaprabhu was just chanting in my group and dancing. So they'd be floating and floating in the realm of the spiritual world through the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and through the association of the holy names and each other, because they were such all great devotees. They were all Nitya Siddha Parikas. They were all eternal associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and of Krishna actually. So Mahaprabhu said, sometimes you'll come to Puri and Jagannath Puri and see me there, and sometimes I will come in this direction again to Bengal to bathe in the Ganga, and indeed Mahaprabhu one time did that. So Advaitacharya, this is 209 and 210, he sent 4 persons to go with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nityananda Gosai, Nityananda Prabhu, Jagannananda Pandit, Damodar Pandit, and Mukunda Datta. Does anyone know where Mukunda Datta was from? Nope. Somewhere in the very, very close to Burma, called Chaturgram, which is also known as Chittagong. That's how it's called in the English pronunciation, Chittagong. And Mukunda Datta, his brother's name was Vasudev Datta, and the family was from that area. And he was an exalted devotee and a wonderful singer, and also another great devotee who ended up giving initiation to Gadadhar Pandit was from the same area, and his name was Pundarik Vidyanidhi. And Mahaprabhu considered him his father, like his father, because when he was in the mood of Radharani, and Pundarik Vidyanidhi was Vrishabhanu Maharaj in Krishna Lila. So Mukunda Datta came. Okay, now here's your first examination. Who else? What were the other 3? Raise your hand if you remember one, without looking at the book or your mobile phone or computer. Who remembers one? Mukunda Datta, Could they remember Pundarik Virginity, but he wasn't one of the ones who went with them, but should always remember him. Who else? Nityananda Prabhu and Jagannatha Pandit and one other Pandit, Damodar Pandit. They're all very unique individuals. They had very special, each one of them had special relationship with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they went with him. So how do you think they felt? They felt we're so honored, so fortunate. They alone weren't crying, practically speaking. Everyone else was crying. So those four went. Okay, who can remember one of them? Raise your hand. But you didn't raise your hand. Lucky girl.
Damodar.
Yes, Damodar Pandit. Jagannatha Pandit. Datta. And Nityananda Prabhu. So, and then after pacifying his mother, Sachimata, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu submitted prayers to our lotus feet. And when everything was arranged, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu circumambulated his mother out of great respect, and then started for Jagannath Puri. In the house of Advaitacharya, there arose tumultuous crying. This was the completely intolerable for them. Again, they were chanting with him every night in Mayapur Navadvip for a year, and he was causing the spiritual world, or the kirtans they had together. They were in the bliss of the spiritual world, and Mahaprabhu, they understood, was the Supreme Lord. They all understood he was the Supreme Lord. They all understood that he was Krishna. He did so many miracles. He did so many things, and some of his contemporaries who were in that kirtan, such as Murari Gupta, he wrote a book about his experiences called Caitanya Caritamrta, which is available. And there's one where Mahaprabhu took on the form of Varahadev, a boar, and then he, with his tusks, he picked up a water pot, and I think he maybe even gored Murari Gupta. So the devotees all saw this, and they all knew it, that he was the Supreme Lord, and they were with him in the full satisfaction of the soul's actual position, in the greatest of love and relationship. And then he left and took sannyas, and they thought they would never see him again, as they had never seen his elder brother Vishwarup again. But then Nityananda Prabhu brought them to Advaitacharya, and they all came to Advaita, and they chanted like even though they saw that he was in the dress of a sannyasi, but still they couldn't think in terms of him that he was going to be leaving again. And then he said, you all do this, you'll all associate with me. And they said, that's not exactly what we want to associate with you in this, by chanting your names, etc. We want to be with you. And then Advaitacharya begged, okay, please, a few more days. Yes, but now the time was coming, and everyone was just, their hearts were breaking. Their hearts were breaking. In the house of Advaitacharya, there was tumultuous Utila Krandana. There arose a great, great crying, sound of crying in the house. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at this point, was unaffected. Sigra Chalila. And very quickly, he left. And Advaitacharya, though, followed him with tears streaming down his face. He followed him. And here's a comment, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains the word nirapeksha means not being affected by anything material and remaining fixed in the service of the Lord. So it means neutral, not attached. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not much care for the roaring tumult and cry in the house of Advaitacharya, which he heard when starting for Jagannath Puri. Now, one may think that how could he do this to the devotees? But that was the dilemma right in the beginning. It's not that he had his service to do. He had to do that, and he was going to do what he had to do. But on the other side, he wanted to be with them, and he was a sannyasi, and he was going to be criticized. So this had been discussed already, if he stayed with them. So it was already organized, and then after everything was sweetly done, it was still time to go. So worldly moralists may criticize Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for being very cruel, but the Lord did not care for such criticism. And especially they criticized him for leaving his mother. Her husband wasn't there. Mahaprabhu's elder brother wasn't there. He left her when he took sannyas. And he left her with who? Whose name was? Vishnupriya. And Vishnupriya was engaged in serving Tulsi all the time. But when Mahaprabhu engaged, he said, "You take care of my mother." So she served. That was her service. And she had the greatest service to do. So she wasn't uncared for. And also when Mahaprabhu was leaving, he also when he took sannyas, he also circumambulated her. It was a very, very touching scene. And he says, I'm staying with you in two forms. The form of the deity and in the form of the holy names. So, but Mahaprabhu was also teaching. He was demonstrating by his example. So Prabhupada continues saying, as the world teacher of this Krishna consciousness movement, he actually showed that a person seriously engaged in Krishna consciousness should not be affected by worldly affection. In other words, ultimately, or really, one has to please Krishna. The best course is to engage in rendering service to the Lord and to become callous to material objectives. So this is very bitter medicine for most people. And one can't imitate if one's not on that level. One can't imitate as if we were on that level, because what we want to do is make sure that we're going in the right direction. Everyone wants to be perfectly healthy, but if one's not perfectly healthy, one has to take some medicines to get healthy, and one has to do some activities to become healthy. So there are ways to lead one's life if one is not on this completely serious level. And there are some people who in their previous lives, like the example from Shastra is Jad Bharat, that in his previous life he was the king Bharat, and the son of Maharaj Rishabhdev, and at some point he left his king. He was the king of the whole world, practically speaking, and he left that and became renounced and went to live in what was the name of the ashram? Where the Gandaki is. Have you been there to the Gandaki? Pulaha ashram, I think. Yes, Pulaha ashram. And there he was engaged in very deep meditation on Krishna. But then he saw a deer, and the deer was afraid of a lion, and the lion was roaring. So the deer, who was pregnant, jumped into the river and gave birth to her baby out of fear, baby deer, and then she drowned. And so Bharat, the king, who was By his nature, he was a protector of people. He saw this little, you know how little baby deers are with the big eyes, and his nature was to protect the helpless because he was a king. I mean, how could he not take it? How could he not take it in? So he took care of it, and the deer became attached to him. But the deer was disturbing his puja, his worship, and the deer attracted his mind by, when he was doing the puja, the deer would come over and, just come near him, and because the deer was treating him like mother. And then one day when the deer wasn't there, and he became frightened, and when looking for the deer, went out looking for the deer, he died. And because he was looking for the deer when he died, in his next life, guess what he became?
Deer.
Indeed, he became a deer. But because he was so advanced, he was gifted with remembrance of his previous life, and he understood why he was born in a deer's body. He knew just what had happened. So when the deer passed away from this world, he became a great saint named Jada. And Jada means like dead almost, like dull, unconscious. So before he was Bharat Maharaj, and then he became Jada Bharat. And he acted, even though he was fully conscious and he knew just what he was doing, he acted as if he was, nowadays we say, mentally challenged. He acted as if all his pieces weren't quite there or all working properly. And people would talk to him and he would look the other way, and people would ask him for something and he'd give them something else, and his father was trying to teach him how to do Achman, and he would continuously get it wrong because he had decided, due to his remembrance and of his activities previously, and he knew the succession of births, he decided, enough. I'm not going to be attached to anything in this world. I'm not going to interact with the world, practically speaking. I'm going to be internally interacting with Krishna. Now, of course, even if we decided to imitate this kind of thing, not that we should decide to imitate it, but even if we said from now on, I'm not going to interact with the material world, and I'm just going to go on the dole, just make believe, or whatever. But you can't do it. Well, you can't do the internal part, which is the essence of it. But he had decided, due to his deep, deep experience, that I've had enough. I understand the very nature of the material world. I'm not going to play in this playground anymore. So this was his level of advancement. So if one is not on that level, there's ways to use whatever one's attachments are, whatever desires are, so that they don't stop us from moving forward, and they don't take us in the exact opposite direction. But there are people like that who say, enough, I've had enough, I'm not enough, this is it. I'm just going to, there's this one, I never met him, but in Vrindavan there was this one sadhu from, I think it was from the Ramanandi Sampradaya, and he was born blind. And he knew each and every one of the 18,000 verses of the Bhagavatam by heart. And all day long he would have people read him commentaries and of the acharyas and this and that. So you can just imagine that he was one of those people that he was trying to study the Bhagavatam, and he kept getting distracted by this and that and this and that, and he must have had this desire, just enough. I just want to become absorbed on this level. So therefore Krishna blessed him with a curse, what would externally would seem like a curse, but because he was internally developed, it was indeed a full blessing. He was fully absorbed, undistracted. So Mahaprabhu, as the teacher, he showed at a certain point one has to be detached from, regardless if Krishna wants one to do something, and one knows what Krishna wants one to do, one has to do it. He actually showed that a person seriously engaged in Krishna consciousness should not be affected by worldly affection. In other words, that doesn't mean we shouldn't have affection. In fact, we can't not be affected by worldly affection unless we have deep, deep affection for Krishna. The best course is to engage in rendering service to the Lord and to become callous to material objectives. Externally, everyone is attached to material things, but if one becomes entangled in such things, he cannot make progress in Krishna consciousness because why? If we're attached to external things, why is it hard to make advancement? Or we can't make advancement?
Because you will not have time.
You won't have time. But because you'll be going in two directions at the same time. I want something material. This is what this is my heart wants this, and my heart also wants that. So if you're trying to go in two directions at the same time, you get pulled in half, and usually we know which side will be the one that wins. So, but not that we have to use it, learn under guidance how to use our situation and our attachments in such a way we don't become entangled. And there's a very interesting point that comes up in a few moments. Therefore, those who are engaged in Krishna consciousness should not care for the so-called morality of the material world if that morality opposes to the service of the Lord. In other words, not that we should be immoral, but if Krishna wants us to do something, and we can't take shelter of sattva guna, the mode of goodness, and material morality, and do that as opposed to Krishna's desire. As Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu has personally shown, one cannot properly execute Krishna consciousness without being neutral. Neutral to the material world means seeing it as that it's meant for Krishna. The material energy is Krishna's material energy, and it is meant for Krishna's service, for Krishna's pleasure. And we become entangled when we see the material energy, we objectify it. We see it as objects meant for my pleasure, our pleasure. Then we become entangled in it. We try to exploit it. We try to enjoy it, but we get caught, and it catches us. We try to catch it, but it catches us. There's an old American folk tale about this. I don't know it well, but there's like a tar baby. It was some kind of a doll made out of tar, and you touch it and you just get stuck to it, and that's what the material energy is like. So we should. What should we do? We'll get a hint in a moment. There's already been. We should engage in worshipping Krishna, we should hear about Krishna, we should chant, and if we don't do that, we won't have any hope. We should associate with devotees. So after he had followed Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu for some distance, Advaitacharya was petitioned by him, by Mahaprabhu, with folded hands. He said to Advaitacharya, he spoke the following sweet words, because Mahaprabhu's dealings were not harsh, they were very sweet, and Krishna's dealings were very sweet too. This is what Mahaprabhu said. Janani prabodhi kora bhakti samadhana tume vyagra hoilo kari na rahiba prana. Please pacify all the devotees and my mother. Please make them peaceful. The sound of them crying was heard. Please make them peaceful. If you become agitated, no one will be able to continue to exist. Saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Advaitacharya and stopped him from following any further. Then, without anxiety, he proceeded to Jagannath Puri. So what would he have been in anxiety about? So after he sent Advaitacharya back, he was without anxiety. So it wasn't that he was callous, because this wasn't material attachments at all. This was the interaction between devotees, that the devotees loved Mahaprabhu and Mahaprabhu loved them. So it wasn't a material interaction, so that instructions by Prabhupada were warning us about material attachments, but that wasn't exactly what was going on, because Mahaprabhu was in anxiety. And what was his anxiety? That they wouldn't be able to, na rahibe pran, they wouldn't be able to live without him. And that was, of course, difficult for him, because he loves his devotees. So what did Mahaprabhu do? What was the last thing he did? Advaitacharya wanted to go with him, and he sent him back to pacify them. So it's very interesting that what is the pacification? It's described here what Advaitacharya is a little bit earlier. There was the festival. See if I can find it easily. Yeah. The opulences. Acharya Shraddha Bhakti Griha Samparadhan. That Advaitacharya's faith, his bhakti, his house, Griha, Sampada, his opulence, and Dana, his wealth. Sakala Safal, everything was used Prabhu Aradhana, to worship the Lord. So Advaitacharya is actually, he's called Sadashiva. So there's some technical understanding of the identity of Advaitacharya, and that he's the material, and his message, in one sense, he's the material energy used in the service of the spiritual. That's what who Advaitacharya is. As Sadashiva, the glance of Mahavishnu, he's the material energy used in the service of the Supreme Lord. And then when the material is used in the service of Krishna, it becomes spiritualized. So that is, in one sense, the best we can do in the material world. Because the devotees wanted Mahaprabhu there, but he couldn't be there. The residents of Vrindavan wanted Krishna to be there, but he couldn't be there. But the best one can do, and to show that we really want to be with Krishna, is the use of the material energy in Krishna's service, Krishna's energy in Krishna's service. And that's the message of Advaitacharya. And that's what he was doing completely. And it's on one level, it's not the same as Krishna personally right there, but when one has love for Krishna, And one shows that love by using everything in Krishna's service. Then Krishna actually becomes present in that. Fascinating. That's called Yukta Vairagya. So this is one of the amazing teachings of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Not that we can renounce anything, everything or anything, practically speaking, but we should live as simply as we practically can. Not get overly attached and overly entangled, but live as simply as we practically can. Take what we need, take what we require. And not that everyone has the same needs and requirements, but we should take what we require and not be shy about that. And then we should because we should know that if we become overly attached to things, we become overly entangled in things. And then we should use the material energy in Krishna service. So Mahaprabhu was unaffected. He left swiftly. Advaitacharya followed him weeping. And then he, without anxiety, knowing that the devotees were being taken care of by Advaitacharya, who was Vishnu Tattva, he was powerful. And then the Lord, with 4 other persons, went along the bank of the Ganga through the path of Chaturabhoga towards Niladri, Jagannath Puri. So Prabhupada's purport describes the path that in detail, a little more detail, and it's described in detail in Chaitanya Bhagavata. And one of the places he visited that Mahaprabhu passed through is a place called Varahanagar. And there was one person there who was reciting the Bhagavatam. His name was, Mahaprabhu, I don't remember his name, but Mahaprabhu gave him the title of Bhagavatacharya. And Mahaprabhu so much appreciated his recitation of the Bhagavatam, the way he did it, and he versified it in Bengali, put it all into Bengali verses that were sweet, and he would recite that, and Mahaprabhu stayed there and danced and chanted all night there, and they have a big museum there of so many different items from Mahaprabhu's Leela that somehow they were collected there. They even had the paper that Mahaprabhu's birth chart, his astrological birth chart, was originally written on by Nilambara Chakrabarti. But it was so faded because 500 years old, you couldn't see anything practically. And they also had a pair of Mahaprabhu's shoes there. So in his book known as Chaitanya Mangal, Chaitanya Bhagavata, Vrindavan Das Thakur has elaborately described the Lord's passage to Jagannath Puri. And then here's the final verse, or next to final verse, there's a benediction. Advaita grihe prabora vilas sune ye jana achire milaye tanre Krishna prema dana. If one hears the activities of the Lord at the house of Advaitacharya, he will certainly, achire means very quickly, he will certainly very soon attain the riches, Krishna prema dana, of love of Krishna. So that's the benediction attached to hearing this pastime that is authoritatively given by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj. And then the final verse, Sri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yar Asha Caitanya Caritamrta Kahi Krishnadas. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I Krishnadas narrate Sri Caitanya Caritamrta following their footsteps. Okay, we'll stop here at least tentatively. and ask if anyone has any questions. Yes, Krishnali.
You were saying, Buddha, that Mahaprabhu stayed in the form of the deities and the holy names when he left Navadvip. Which deities would be, which particular deities?
But that's not exactly what I meant. I meant that he's in the form of the deities and in the form of the holy names, so you can appreciate him, not any specific deity. But there's a story about, if you've been to the the home of Gauridas Pandit in Kalna. Have you been there?
Yeah, Ambika Kalna.
Ambika Kalna. Have you been there? So there's beautiful Gaunitai, big Gaunitai deities there. Some of the original from the time of Mahaprabhu, actually. And they also have Mahaprabhu's, I think his Bhagavad Gita, that he himself studied or had there. And they also had an oar that Nityananda Prabhu used to come across the Ganga to get there. So there was a time when this was the home of Gauridas Pandit. So Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu had visited Gauridas Pandit's home, and when it was time to leave, Gauridas Pandit said, "Please don't leave, please don't leave." And Mahaprabhu gave him the set of Gaunitai deities and said, the same as the Gaunitai, we're the same as these deities, so you can just worship them and we'll be there. So then they started walking to the river, and Gauridas Pandit was saying, please, please, that's not, I don't want the deities, I want you to stay. That's not what I want you and Nityananda to stay. And Mahaprabhu said, okay. So they went back, and they climbed on the altar, and the deities walked off. And they went to, then he said, please, please, we don't want you. And then I think that exchange went on a few times, something like that. Have you been there? Now do you want to go?
Yeah, it's in Navadvip, in the
Not,
main island.
no, Ambika Kalna. Do you want to go? Would you like to see? It's quite amazing.
Vishnu Priya also have a deity? Did Vishnu Priya have a deity? It's in Navadvip?
There's a deity of Vishnu Priya in Navadvip.
No, her deity of Mahaprabhu.
I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe others know.
So we went to visit, and I think I've got a picture of
Okay.
Mahaprabhu's holding his hands out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's very...
Dameshwar.
Dameshwar. Any other questions or comments?
Talks about this material emotions and spiritual emotions. This talk about material emotions and spiritual emotions. When one tries to control the material emotions, can it be misunderstood as being very callous? That's what Prabhupada writes. Is there a danger of becoming callous in the process?
Well, one can't do it. The balance has to be there. The only way one can do it is depth of spiritual emotions. In other words, unless we have spiritual attachment, we won't actually be able to be materially detached. And Prabhupada gives the example of the impersonalist Mayavadi sannyasis, who by the power of their detachment, of their mind, of their intelligence, of their vairagya, they become detached from the material world. But because they don't get pleasure from Krishna conscious activities, this is what he said, within 1 or 2 or 3 years, they go back to material activities in the form of opening up hospitals, schools, because they've already said Brahman Satya, the absolute is truth, and Jagat Mithya, the material world is illusion. So if this is your philosophy that the material world is illusion, like a dream, it has no existence, then what is the use of opening up a hospital in a dream? If that's your philosophy. So it's a material activity in the mode of goodness. They're forced to go back to material activities in the mode of goodness because they have no concept of spiritual activities. So, and even when Kunti Devi prayed, that my attachments be cut, our Acharya's comment that who are her attachments to? It was to the Pandavas, and they're all great devotees. So when she says let them be cut, she's talking about just the material sentiment part. So it's a tricky point, and and how could it's not natural in one sense. And if we try to do something artificial, then we just get ourselves, and imitative, we get ourselves into deep trouble. So we don't want to do that. But yet there's truth in it, philosophical truth, that if we're materially attached and materially entangled, then that's going to cause our future repetition of material births. So the philosophy always has to be balanced with practical knowledge on how to apply the philosophy to different cases, to different individuals, so that they advance. Yeah, because if just having no emotions is the goal, then it's better to be a rock or a tree or some kind of a stone. But that won't be satisfying for the spirit soul who's longing for fulfillment on so many different levels. Good question to speak more about. So that's why if you read one verse and one purport, that emphasizes one thing and one angle on things, and just advise others or take it that that's what I have to do, then we could cause trouble. Therefore, one has to have a deep understanding of the whole scope of the literatures, and then synthesized, and know which principle to apply at which time to which person. And Prabhupada once told the story. There was a veterinarian. You know the story? And very experienced, expert veterinarian. You know the story? You know the story? Well, if enough people don't know it, I'll tell it. So one man came to the veterinarian, and he had a big lump, not the man, but the horse that he brought, had a big lump in his throat. And the veterinarian, examined him and then took a hammer and went bang, hit the horse in the throat, and the horse went boom, and he was fine. The man thanked him very much, and he left. Then you know the story? Then the veterinarian left, and his assistant was there, who had watched the veterinarian. So then another man came with a horse, with a big lump in his throat. But the veterinarian wasn't there, only his childlike assistant was there. So the assistant said, well, I know how to deal with this. I just saw it. So he took out a big hammer and he whacked the horse in the throat, and the horse died. So the man was furious. And then when the veterinarian came, he was furious. And of course the foolish apprentice said, but I saw you do that. And then the veterinarian said, I assume when Prabhupada told the story, he said, you rascal. but I don't remember that part. But he said, one of them, the first case, when I hit it with a hammer, the horse had an apple stuck in his throat, and I just knocked it out, and he swallowed it. And in the case where you did it, the horse had some kind of a tumor. And you exploded the tumor, and the horse died. So what's the moral of the story?
Don't imitate.
Huh?
Don't copy, don't imitate.
Yeah, one has to have you can't take one principle and apply it to every situation. One has to have some vigyan, some scientific understanding. Yeah.
Just in relation to Mulida's question about the spiritual and emotions and material emotions, can you say then that if you don't deal properly with the material emotions, you can't move on to the spiritual emotions with that?
If you're extremely advanced, when our material emotions are giving us trouble, we can fully take shelter of Krishna and have it and deal with it through neglect. If 3 times plus 1 before, if we're that advanced. But generally, unless we're materially balanced, the material imbalances will, if we're not that advanced, the material imbalances will come and attack us later and give us all kinds of difficulties. So better to be non-imitative and understand what's best for us from a proper doctor and move forward. But regardless of our situation, those 3 things that Mahaprabhu told the devotees of Krishna Katha, Krishna Aradhana, and Krishna Nam, we should do that, and that will impel us forward. So what's the problem? Because when we hear this side, that we should be materially callous and everything like that, then what does the mind do? What does the mind tend to do?
Swing to the other extreme.
Huh?
Swing to the other extreme.
Like what?
Try to go into the artificial mode of thinking that spiritually advanced and try to generate spiritual emotions.
So I better generate some spiritual emotions. Okay, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah. And how do you do that? How do you try to generate spiritual emotions? But okay, what's another thing that the mind does?
Rebels.
It rebels. And what does the mind say when it rebels? No. This isn't practical. Criticizes and everything. But yet, what is the truth that Prabhupada is stating here is that one day all the material things that we're attached to, regardless of how attached to them we are, no matter whether we like it or not, one day we're going to have to leave them behind. So this is unavoidable reality in the material world. I mean, for the last countless years, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, it's not like people were happy to to die and leave their family and their wealth and their house and their possessions and their pet dogs and monkeys and horses and their land and relatives and country and bodies behind. It's not like people want to do it, but it doesn't make a difference. Whether we're a big man, big lady, little lady, whether we're a bug or a rat or a giraffe or a
Lion.
a lion, yes, or a... Come on, you can say one. Think of some type of a creature.
Lion or monkey.
A monkey, okay. Everyone goes. Can't stay, even if one's Brahma or king. One just can't stay. So therefore, how to live in this world in such a way that we fulfill the purpose of life, that we don't generate some sentiment that I've heard that it shouldn't be, I shouldn't be attached, so therefore I'll make believe I'm not, from now on, I'm not going to be attached to anything. But that doesn't work. Or, okay, I need spiritual emotions. How am I going to generate spiritual emotions? And some made in China, a spiritual emotion generator. You can buy one on eBay. So one should follow the process and accept where one is and try to move forward from that position. Any other questions? There's just a couple of minutes left. What do you think, Mataji? How old is your child?
Oh, she's just 6 months now.
Okay. What does that mean for you? You have a 6-month-old child and you're hearing one should become materially callous and not attached. What is this a book about? What is this? What does this have to do with me or anyone? How many times during the class did you think of your baby?
Not really, because my husband is pretty good and he's looking after her very well.
How many times? Okay. So how did your mind react when you heard that point?
I think attachments are natural because we are very much materially in the modes of the nature, so we already have all the attachments anyway. So I think we just have to try and direct our actions, whatever we do spiritually, try and see if we can somehow use whatever we've got in spirituality. I mean, like I have my daughter, so, well, she's still small, but it's a gift of God, so just try and serve her, saying that it's God's gift. So,
and
try to, but it's difficult.
And it's difficult, yeah. But Supreme Lord's, but she belongs to the Supreme Lord, and you're a caretaker, mother caretaker. There's an example that we used to give that shows just the opposite. When the devotees all used to live in it, most of the devotees lived in the temple. Some devotees had their own cars, and some, they were the temple cars. So when you look at the temple cars, they would all, no one would take care of them at all, and there would be a wreck. And when in people's personal cars, they take care of very carefully. So that's not exactly the way it should work. We should put the two together and take care of everything. That this is, Krishna has placed this gift in my hands. For now, how can I take care of it in such a way that it's properly used? I mean, not in your case, it's not an it, but in Krishna's service, because this is Krishna's gift. I like the way you said that. It's nice. So when we look at everything like that, Krishna is giving me not exactly proprietorship, but stewardship. That in my care, placed in my care, his things placed in my care for him. So somehow engage it so that it gives him pleasure, because it's his. So whether it's our daughter or our son or our bodies or our cars or our finances or land or some abilities that we have, it should be used for Krishna's pleasure. Think of them that Krishna has given me this. Or even our individual natures. Everyone has their own individual gifts. Okay. We shall end. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Sri Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj ki jai. And next week, Krishna willing, we shall begin the next chapter and we shall go to Vrindavan.